Hello and welcome everyone to a brand new installment of the Literally Me podcast. Today with a very special guest. We're joined by our pal Ben. And how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Really appreciate you having me on. This is my first time on a podcast, so it's going to be interesting.
Hell yeah, popping the podcast cherry in a way.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, we're going to talk about
Absolutely.
a very interesting film today because it's a film that you dislike a lot, which will make for an interesting discussion. And
Oh
that
yeah.
film, of course, is Only God Forgives, starring our boy Ryan Gosling and directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. Still don't know how to pronounce his name correctly, but yeah, that's a film we'll talk about, and we each came up with a couple films to recommend based on that. But before we do that, let's just get into like a basic discussion about the film. And Tristan, do you want to kick it off and it's yours? Should we?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's yeah.
yeah. I well, I'm very excited. When Dino told me that and Ben was a big dissenter of this movie, I was really excited, even more excited to have him on because I understand why people really dislike this movie. And I think the first time I watched it, probably when it came out, like maybe around 2013 or so, I remember sitting there and just being like, "What the fuck is this? Like, what am I watching here?" And then I rewatch it now, like almost 10 years later or 10 years later, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get what Refn is doing here. Like, I get what he's going for. Do I think it's completely entertaining the entire time? Maybe not. There are some moments where it takes me out. But in general, I was very surprised at how much I actually did find myself enjoying it this time around as compared to like 10 years ago or whenever I saw it the first time. For you guys, did your opinion on it stay the same if you rewatched it for this as it did when you saw it the first time, or did it change quite a bit? Ben, I see you nodding down there.
Oh man, that title is apt because God will never forgive that fucking film. That is, it is still, dude. That is like rewatching it now. I thought I would have a more nuanced approach or some new revelations that he had in terms of looking how he built his visual style, and it kind of solidified his visual style in Drive, where he used quadrants really well in his shots and how he built the tension between those frames. And then he kind of went into excess. And he generally does that with his color schemes and everything. And he had a really crazy saturation in this, and then there was really strong clashing of colors, which was a little bit more subtle in Drive, and it allowed to build with the characters accordingly. But this one was just off the fucking rails. I mean, this dude was. It was yeah. I mean, it's just for me. It's not my cup of tea for damn fucking sure. Like I don't know if I'm
For
allowed to curse
sure.
on podcasts, but that was just not what I and like the attempt to do things as a Gary Cooper silent type worked in Drive,
Mhm.
but set in the world of contemporary America where values are generally fall within the same range, but this is a cultural clash. So his non-existent dialogue or actions that are played through for me there's too much of a culture clash in order for that subtlety to kind of play out, and I don't think
Yeah.
and I just don't feel it. I just don't feel the tension that he had wanted to build because Albert Brooks in Drive was the one that was this unassuming force. The Thai cop wielding double Krabi Krabong swords. I mean, yeah, that's as subtle as you'll get in that film, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, so it's
Yeah.
hard for me to that.
When you first saw it, Ben, did you see it like when it came out, or did you kind of catch up on it sometime later? The first time you saw it.
Uh, I saw it pretty soon because I really enjoyed Drive. It was like I was
Mhm.
like I it's kind of one of those things where like it was his first American movie, so you're like, oh right, he's transitioning into like it's interesting narrative. It's really great performance, Ryan Gosling and then Christina. Hendricks and everything, and all these people coming out, and Carey Mulligan, and like Bryan Cranston, Albert Brooks. You're like, holy shit! Like, where is he gonna go with this? And then he was like, I'm going to, we're going to make a film about Thailand, and it's just like, yeah, I was excited to go see it, and then I kind of went, oh man, I should have really waited for that to come out somewhere else, and I shouldn't have paid
Yeah.
to watch that. Because
Yeah.
just the whole
Did
thing
you?
is just, you want to fight? Like, really, man? Like, that's the stance. Okay, all right, that's fine. Like, that's where we're gonna go with this. Okay, all right, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. I can't even argue it's a European sense because it's not a European sense. It's a weird. It's almost Dogma 96 esque, the attempt that he's trying to make in terms
Yeah.
of changing the narrative or attempting to go almost so subtle to the point that you're reflecting yourself into a character, which is what one of my favorite directors, Robert Bresson, did. Because it was such flat characters, but you had allowed yourself to inject yourself or reflect yourself within the flat palette, almost of a mirror of the
Hmm.
characters. That's why you non-professional actors, which is what I think he did with this Thai cop, or I think he was a former cop, or whatever the case may be. But it just doesn't match. For me, it's like Kristen Scott Thomas was amazing, but then the whole weird subplot, it was hard enough to reconcile that it was a white dude running a Muay Thai club in Thailand.
Right. Right. Dino,
That
did
alone
you?
is look, yeah.
I was gonna say, Dino, did you? How did your opinion change on it from last time you saw it, however many years ago, to last week when you watched it again?
Well, I saw it, I don't know, like, I think like 6 years ago, probably for the first time, and I remember liking it. And at that time, I hadn't really begun my film journey as much as I am right now. So I've watched so many more films since then. So I was curious to know if my opinion changed at all. But I think I still like it the same because I like these dreamy, because this film is very dreamy and it doesn't feel real. And all the colors that are popping, it's such visual eye candy. Like, it's just so neon drenched. And I like films like that. I like dreamy films. I like slow films. Sure, this film has some moments where you're like, okay, like, can we speed it up a little bit? But overall, I like it. I mean, Ryan Gosling, I know there's a lot of criticism, like how slow he talks and how little he talks, but I like that about him because he does try to act a lot more with like his facial expression, his eyes, and things like that. And it doesn't work for a lot of people, and I understand that. But I like Nicholas Winding Refn. I like his films. I've always liked them. The Neon Demon and Drive are like two of my favorite films, and this one was an interesting rewatch. And I can get all the criticism, but overall, I have to say, like, I enjoyed it for sure.
I think with Nicholas Winding Refn, it's especially coming off a Drive. Like, this is like his follow up to Drive. I definitely like. I kind of agree with Betsy. Like, it's he kind of got into his own head where he started gassing himself up a little bit after Drive. And there's a hilarious interview that he did with William Friedkin, R.I.P. I think it was shortly after this movie came out, where he has this amazing interview he does with Friedkin and Refn. And I highly recommend everyone who's listening, if you have not seen this interview, just type it into YouTube. It's fucking hilarious. Refn is like gassing himself up, saying how Drive and Only God Forgives are masterpieces and all this. And Friedkin essentially sitting there, he's like, shut the fuck up. He's like, even if it is a masterpiece, you won't know for another 50 years. Drive and Only God Forgives aren't even a blip on the asshole of humanity. He's like, those movies aren't shit. And he's just going in on Refn. And it's one of the greatest videos on YouTube, just in general. But you do see in that interview that while I think Refn is kind of playing a part, he genuinely believes that Drive and Only God Forgives are the two greatest films that maybe have ever been made ever. And I think when he gets the backing of Hollywood and the critics and audiences and everyone saying Drive is incredible, I think that's what, no pun intended, drives him to make this movie that he's like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I can go to Thailand and make a movie where no one talks. There's no real plot line that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. And yeah, and it'll work because I'm a genius. And it's a very arrogant film in that way, but I kind of have to respect it. I kind of respect that he kind of went this way after such a huge hit in Drive. instead of like pandering to make a Drive 2, not like a sequel, but another movie just like it to ensure. I kind of appreciate that he sort of took a left, did something completely different, but also it is almost laughable to see like what his intention is with Only God Forgives. Um, but with that being said, what both of you guys, what are your general thoughts on Refn and his movies in general? Or Ben, are you a fan? I know you mentioned Drive, but are you a fan of any of his other stuff?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I There's also the documentary of him making Only God Forgives. So there's a behind the scenes documentary, and he's
Mm,
losing shit because he has no idea what the fuck is going on. And generally for me, like plot isn't a big thing because plot and story are two different things, right?
yeah.
So how someone approaches the story or how a person tells a story generally has nothing to do with plot. There are plenty of amazing films that have no plot at all. Like there's was it God damn it, the one with Humphrey Bogart. Um it'll come to me a second, but there's amazing films that really don't have plot as the main driving force. And the
Hmm.
problem with me and Refn, the not problem, the what I feel about when I look at his work, it's just there is no ebb and flow. I think one of my favorite quotes from Kubrick was always that films are more music than fiction, right?
Uh-huh.
So it just seems like he's hitting us a note and he's waiting for the and it's reverberating louder and louder and louder to get your point across. He's nailing it home. He's hitting the same nail just to get the point across that I am visually stunning, but the the story of what you're trying to get across, it's so subtle as what he's trying to get to that he's hoping that there's almost an opposite effect that he's going so much visually that it has to reverberate back to that his storytelling comes out from within there. You're digging and
Hmm.
finding and interacting with it, which is the flatness that he has to it. Even with the Neon Demon and everything after that, like I feel like that's what that's how I perceive his work. But I'm not highly interested in it. I don't think that there was anything in there that um challenged me as a viewer or as a yeah, well, as much as I love films, there are films that I watch that I want them to see what else, what are you trying to get across? What's the point or what story are you telling? It's generally kind of lost on me sometimes, for a reference work. So not the biggest fan, but I respect his color palettes are fantastic. I mean, he has interesting shots. He has great
Yeah.
full work, but you know, just because you're really good at grammar doesn't mean you're a great writer. Like,
Sure.
um,
Sure.
it has nothing. One really has nothing to do with the other. If anything, people are more. The messier you are, the more that you're breaking out of these kind of confinements of what you perceive to be cinema or whatever. You're pushing the envelope. You're trying to see what else is out there because it's only been around for 100 years recently, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
100 years into writing, 100 years into painting, 100 years into sculpture, you barely scratch the surface on it. So I can always appreciate someone trying to push the envelope and try something different, which is what everybody should try to strive to do, have their own perspective. I just don't hit his frequency. It's just me.
Yeah. That's understandable. I think it's a very unique frequency that he's on. And to your point, it kind of brought something to mind where you're mentioning how he's going so subtle, but in a way in this movie, when he does that, it almost becomes like anti-subtle. Like it becomes so obvious what he's doing that it's just he's serving himself 100%. It's a very selfish movie. Like objectively, it's very selfish. He's making it completely for himself, so that way he can just be like, "Oh my god, I'm the fucking best director ever." Like it's very obvious when you watch this movie, it's a very self-serving project, and it becomes very unsubtle. It's very on the nose what he's trying to do. But again, there is something where it's like a car crash in a good way where it's like I just can't stop looking at it. I very much like seeing it, or like maybe a better analogy would be like I don't even know, maybe like Liam Gallagher or something from Oasis, like someone who's very arrogant, but you're like I kind of like you because of your arrogance. Like it's kind of it's funny, it's
Or
inspiring, it's
Kanye.
interesting. Kanye is
It's
another good
Kanye.
one. That's a better example. Somewhere he's like, this guy is such an arrogant piece of shit, but I kind of am still interested in what you're doing because of it.
I will say one thing to the point that you said is like this very self-serving as a filmmaker, and I think that is every filmmaker. I think
Definitely.
I mean, majority of the great filmmakers to me, they're always making stuff to entertain themselves, right? And then
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I get what you mean by that, but I also think like he's doing a caricature of himself, so the audience will like his image as a director.
Yes. Let me
That's
rephrase
what
that. He's trying to serve the self that he believes other people think he is, or he wants other people to think he is, as opposed to just serving the film he wants to make. He's like, I need people to know that I'm a European filmmaking genius who makes these masterpieces, as opposed to, I like this story, I like this movie, I'm going to make it for me. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, that's a great point,
absolutely.
Ben. Dino, if you were to rank your favorite, because I know you're a big fan of the NWR, what's your number? Putting Drive aside, because I think Drive is kind of an obvious number one for most
Yeah.
people. What would you put at like the top of your list of Refn's movies?
So, like I said, generally, I'm a fan of Refn. I've seen a lot of his stuff. Not all of them. I haven't seen the Pusher films, which I've heard are really
Hmm,
good.
yeah.
I think The Neon Demon is my number one because I really like that film. I like the way it looks. I also like the way he approaches like this weird horror film in a way, but it's very surreal and dreamy. But in a sense, it also talks about very important issues and makes like it's like a critique on not just Hollywood, but also like the modeling scene and things like that. So I like that film a lot. And Drive obviously would be my number one. But apart from that, which I like him, but his other projects I don't like as much. For example, Bronson, I didn't like that
Oh
much.
yeah.
Valhalla Rising was just so hard to get through. I think Ben, yeah,
I
Ben's about to cook.
totally
He's
forgot.
about to cook.
Fucking totally forgot he did Bronson. That
So did
is
I.
the only
So did I.
that is the only film I fucking like from him. That is probably his best piece.
I
That
think
is
Bronson's
probably his best.
incredible. I don't know why my mind like always thinks Aronofsky did Bronson every time I think about it. I think it's because like The Wrestler or something. Like I get those two
Oh yeah,
mixed up.
no,
Like
it has
Bronson
that.
is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Bronson is fucking
Oh,
great.
fuck,
it's
totally
interesting
forgot about
because
Bronson. Shit.
I didn't like Bronson to be honest. I have to rewatch it to be honest.
Yeah.
And I
It's cool
think
when you
that
watch it. It's like a theatrical production that he just happens to be filming. Like it's a really really neat approach to like this character, and yeah, Refn really killed that shit. I also completely forgot that he made that. Yeah.
Totally
I need
blanked
to
on
give it a
that. Oh,
rewatch. But the thing is, all the criticism about him, I understand them, but I don't see them in those films I mentioned. But then it gets into his TV shows,
Oh yeah.
which both Too Old to Die Young and Copenhagen Cowboy. I've started both shows. And I'm a fan of his like style, but I don't
Hmm.
think it translates well into TV to be honest. Because I like his films when they're like 1 hour and 20, 1 hour and 30. But as soon as you get into episodes and 4 hours, 5 hours, that's where I really understand the criticism a lot of people have for his films. Because then I feel like this is just pretty like, shots and like pretty neon colors, but it's just too slow. And I don't think TV shows work as well for me. So I didn't finish either of those. I started them both. I think I
Hmm.
watched like 2 or 3 episodes and I was like, okay, I need to like slow down a little bit because I can't. It became a
Yeah.
chore to get through. Have either of
Yeah.
you guys watched one of these shows or
I I did
mm,
watch the Too Old to Die Young when it came out, but again, I made it because I remember that was the whole thing. You could watch it in any order or something like that. Like he was trying to approach it in that way.
Mhm.
Which is such, especially coming from fucking Refn, this guy who makes these things that are so ambiguous to understand. He's like, well, here's 10 hours of something you can watch in any order you want. Probably every like Only God Forgives hater like wants to jump off a bridge, like hearing that. But it was one of those. Gave it a few episodes and gave up. And then Copenhagen Cowboy, I was excited to check out because he kept hyping it up so much. But I thought it was a movie, and when I saw it was a series, I was like, I'm not doing it again. Like, I'm not going to watch another Refn TV series.
it
Yeah,
should have been
not for me. Yeah,
yeah. it was his approach. He wanted to do like a superhero story, and I was super excited. I also thought it was a movie at first, but then it was like a
Yeah,
TV show. I was like, interesting, all right. And I want to finish it because it had some interesting concepts, and I liked his approach on a very different superhero like
yeah,
style and story. But ultimately, I think it's just too slow for TV because with TV you have to keep like people involved and to watch the next episode. And
yeah,
I don't think he did that, so that's why it didn't work for me. But yeah,
yeah.
what would you
I
guys?
like the.
Mhm.
No, go ahead,
I just wanted to ask what you guys' ranking of his films would be.
Ben.
Honestly, I didn't even know he did a TV series, so that's how much I'm not involved in that dude's world. I was like, "Oh, fuck. Right, he did have a TV series. Totally forgot about that shit." Probably Bronson is first for me. Um, and then Drive, and then everything else will kind of fall under just the rest. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
I think.
like Neon. Yeah, I can't rank them because 'cause they're all pretty bad, so it's just at a certain point, they kinda just muddle together. I sound like
Yeah.
such a fucking hater. It's horrible, but it's just like
No,
I
no,
just
I love it. Yeah.
it's just kind of like I like if I gotta choose out like what's the worst place to get shot after the head and the heart, like everything just still sucks. So I'm not gonna be sitting there going,
Sure.
well, the knee's better than the shoulders. Like, no, you just it's just they're all terrible. It's all fucking sucks. Outside from kill
Yeah.
shots, dude, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah. I think apart from Drive, which is like an obvious just number one for me, Bronson has to be up there. Like Ben completely forgot this man just like snapped in 2008 with this movie for no reason, and then like just went back into his little Danish like nightmare world of a mind he's in. But Bronson is fucking incredible. That movie's amazing. Drive. I've actually have not seen Neon Demon. That's one of like the that and Valhalla Rising, I think, are the only ones I've not seen. Maybe one or two of the other really early things.
Mhm.
But I'm interested in checking out Neon Demon. I think it's on Netflix over here. I might throw it on later tonight or something. But um, yeah, Driving Bronson, and I love Pusher. I think the first Pusher is fucking incredible. Um, yeah, I would say I'm an admirer of Refn's from afar. Like I'm not like a fanboy by any means, but if I get word that he's dropping something, I will definitely Google it and check out what it is.
Yeah,
Whereas if
just
I hear the fucking
there's
Russo brothers are making something, I'll just be like, all right, who gives a fucking shit what these idiots are making?
Hey, I'm
But
yeah,
excited
I
to
mean
hear your thoughts on the Neon Demon actually, because I think
yeah,
you like it. It's insane what he does with that film because it's horror, but
yeah,
also
I
it's
think he definitely tones it down.
Mhm.
He definitely tones it
say that
down
again.
comparative to how subtle he was in Only God Forgives. I definitely agree with Dino in this that he takes into a really interesting place because I think it's almost like he kind of goes back to where he was with Drive, and he allows the subtle to play the subtle, but he allows for the surrounding characters to have more life around them because it's not just you're not just watching like a fucking dying plant. Like you're watching
Yeah,
one in the midst of a botanical garden. You watch like a dying plant. Great. There's support. There's juxtaposition. There's scale. There's something different that you can bounce off of. And I do think that comparative to Only God Forgives is like there is you do see a narrative shift in how he approaches the story. Not the protagonist, but more the characters surrounding that world. I think he
mhm.
enriches, and I think that is because yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know why that dude chose Thailand of all places. I mean, granted, like, you don't need to be connected to a place to write about it, but it just seems like such a random fucking thing. But yeah,
Hmm.
Neon Demon is there are the brashness of Bronson that we really liked, that I really liked. You see flickers of that throughout, so it's like there's a bit of an ebb and flow more in Neon Demon
Cool,
comparatively.
cool. I'll have to check that out. Well, one question we asked, and Ben, this one might be a little bit difficult for you, but really try to sit here and think, be as nice as you can. Is there one moment in this movie that you're actually like, yeah, I liked this. Like this was my favorite part of the 90 minutes of death I had to, sit through. Was there one moment where you're like, this isn't that
This one stuck
bad, or I like this scene?
Kristen Scott Thomas. She's fantastic. I mean, she's
Yeah.
she's a fantastic actress, and she really brings. I mean, it's big and bold, but bring his head on a platter moment. It's very
Yeah.
kind of like until the revelation happens, you don't understand why she's so why she's so strongly reactive to these things. But yeah, I think she has really great moments in that film. I think that was the only other really person that actually showed anything more than just maudlin kind of like I don't know, just like stone face kind of reactions. So it's just like
Yeah.
it's two walls facing each other in a fight. You're like, all right, well, I mean, somebody gotta fucking move. But Kristen
Yeah.
Scott Thomas brings kind of the emotion and builds and allows for a provocation of some kind. So you see kind of the engines and the gears start moving when she starts pushing, and you realize, whatever you read into the whole Freudian kind of like Oedipal kind of complex or whatever everybody has in that thing. But I think she provides the kind of kick in the pants it needs when it just kind of just runs a little too slow, or the pacing comes a little bit too slow, and I think she's really good in that. She has good moments in there.
Yeah. Dino, what about you? Favorite moment, favorite scene, favorite anything from this movie?
I like when that crime boss like sings on the stage. I think he does it 2 times in the film. I
Yeah.
just think it's a
Yeah.
very funny scene. And there's one, or like I guess two moments that I really like, and it's sort of a parallel. It's kind of shallow because it's not really about the plot, but there's a scene where Ryan Gosling he's sitting there in like that strip club and he's watching that
Uh-huh.
girl. And then later on when he gets beat up, he's in that same position, like the same look, the way he's sitting, but he's just like all bruised up. And like that's
Hmm.
like the parallel of those images. I always like that about that film. So I think that would be like my favorite moment. And what about you?
Yeah, I think I don't know, it's tough because the whole thing almost feels just like one general like 90-minute moment that is like happening.
Yeah.
Um but I do like I do like the police chief or like that police lieutenant or whatever. I think he's a really interesting character who is like super intimidating and really like intense to kind of watch in a very interesting way, as opposed to just being like the typical Hollywood, gruff, I'm big, I have a deep voice, I have all this. There's something like really sinister about this guy, and I think it's like a really intense and creepy character that is
Mm.
so Refn. Like it's very much a Refn kind of character, this guy. Um and I think he might be like my favorite kind of character in this. Obviously, Kristen Scott Thomas is unbelievable, but there's something every time this guy comes on screen, and especially when he's singing in the club and everything. I'm just like, this guy is unbelievable. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? He's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so I would say anytime he's on screen um, would have been my favorite. And does he act typically, or were you saying he actually was a police chief at one point in real life?
Yeah, I forget where I heard that. Maybe I think trying to think like if that was I know he was oh man.
Let's see here. I
I
mean, he
know
has
I
acted in some other things.
yeah, so he was an actor, but he wasn't really he wasn't really well known. I mean, he's well known in I think in Thailand, but like outside
Yeah,
of that, I don't think he really done a lot of things. I think he's more local Thai film circuit kind of thing.
I think
But
so.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think his characterization is in the perspective of a foreigner in Asia, that is scary. Like in a place where you
yeah,
don't understand the language, you don't understand the culture, the guy's just not responding. That is scary. Indifference, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And indifference is the scariest thing in the world. So his indifference to the violence and what he inflicts or is inflicted upon the indifference of it is super intimidating because you're reading into that, which is beautiful. And I felt like he's trying to parallel Ryan Gosling's character to have the same level of indifference and power. And these two, you know, I don't want to say alpha male kind of bullshit. It's just like these two epitome of power
sure.
and respect clashing, and you're seeing them being built up by each other, and I kind of understand what he's trying to get at it, but it's just I just don't think that it, because you get the volatility behind Ryan Gosling's character and the pushing him, and then the cop is the one that's exuding that volatility on his, but a very quiet. It's not a flamethrower; it's a torch.
Yeah.
So how he
Yeah.
uses it is very different. So how they approach their sense of power or their sense of conflict, what they exude upon themselves, it's there, but then I just don't think it hits exactly how we would have liked, or it just doesn't work for me at this point.
Sure. Dino, any final thoughts or any last sort of things you want to mention about this movie before we get into some other movies we want to wreck based on Only God Forgives?
Yeah, well, Ben said like why this place, why Thailand? I think Nicholas Winding Refn just likes neon, so he was like, "Oh, where are there a lot of neon signs? Oh, I guess Thailand." I think that's pretty much the only reason. I don't know why else he would be there. I think it's just his obsession with
Thailand
neon.
or Vegas, his two options. Thailand or
Yeah,
Vegas.
I was gonna say Berlin, dude. Just go to Bauhaus or some crap, like some
Yeah.
super German fucking like I was like, yeah, Germany would have been fine. There's plenty neon places over there, or fucking Amsterdam. Yeah, it would have been fine.
yeah. I think just the neon signs and just to like, in his opinion, to do something like because he was in the U.S. He did drive, so maybe he wanted something like an Asian country. Maybe he liked that approach, and but yeah, it's I think there's a
Yeah.
lot more thought
He's
that
trying to
went
cover
into
the map.
yeah.
Yeah. And trying to see him do a film in Antarctica next up. See what kind of neon light you can get from that. Maybe Aurora Borealis, the northern star or northern lights.
Yeah,
That's the neon shining down on him. Yeah.
I'm getting ideas.
Well,
You might do
yeah.
that.
Well, a question that we typically ask on this pod every ep, which Ben, I'm curious to hear your response. But on a scale
Mm.
of what should we
Hands,
do it? Do you know 1 to 10?
hands,
What
hands.
hands?
Hmm.
How much is this character, this Ryan Gosling character of Julian, literally you, or are you literally him?
Like, how much am I that character?
Yes. How
Like, how
much
much
can
do
you
I
relate to
feel
this
it?
guy? Yes.
I mean, the only experience I have is I was a professional fighter in Thailand, so that's the closest I'll have that. But yeah, I don't know where that, maybe like a 5, I guess, for just for the martial arts part. But aside from that,
Sure.
and living in Thailand, that's probably the closest thing I'll have. But characteristics wise, maybe a little more. Yeah, uh, yeah, I guess like a 5. Yeah, a 5 out of
Yeah,
10,
that's
maybe.
solid.
Yeah,
That's a bit higher
yeah,
than I was
yeah, yeah.
expecting. Dino, what about you?
I didn't expect Ben's to be that high because I think mine surprisingly a lot lower. I think than yours because I can't really relate to him on a personal level with his mommy issues or whatever he has or the fighting stuff. So there's really not a lot that I can go for. And so I think it'd be like maybe a 1 or 2 just
Mm.
because I don't know, because I don't want to give a 0, but that's pretty much it. But yeah,
Yeah, I'll probably go like a 3 or 4 hands on that because I can appreciate sort of his like sort of objective approach to like the revenge, where he's like, well, like when Kristen Scott Thomas comes in, she's like, if he would have, if this would have happened to you, she would have already, or he would have already had, your killer's head on a platter and served to me or whatever she says. And he's like, well, it's not really that cut and dry. Like he raped and murdered like a child. And like there is some kind of like moral compass for him, like however
Yeah.
shallow that may be, there is still something kind of there that's sort of driving him, again, no pun intended. But yeah, maybe 3 or 4. He doesn't talk enough for me to really get it, but that's kind of maybe some character stuff. I'm like, well, at least he's objective, that's pretty
let the
pretty
guy
good.
live. When he went with the gun, like when he heard, when he has
Yeah.
this, he let him live. He didn't kill him. Afterwards, his brother sent out the hit,
Yeah.
but I appreciate
Yeah.
that about him. He definitely has his heart in
Mhm.
the right place. Also with the child, like he protected the child,
Yeah.
so he
Yeah.
definitely has like some hero qualities to him.
Yeah. Only God and
Yeah, he's
Julian
just
forgive, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has protagonist tendencies, but yeah. Yeah, maybe I should have scored mine a little lower, but no, actually, well, martial arts is a big part of like a lot of things, so
Yeah,
like, I have to at least give
yeah,
because that's
you're on the
I mean,
record now.
2 personalities. He has martial arts and then not martial arts, so I gotta give the 50%.
Sure,
Just
sure.
Yep.
Give it to him. Okay, cool. Well, at this point in the pod, we typically each recommend a handful. I think we're gonna do three each, right, Dino? Instead of the usual four. But three movies that we think are similar or in keeping with the literally me theme. What movies we think this Ryan Gosling character would look at and be like, oh, that guy's literally just he's just like me. He's literally me. Um, would you like to kick it off, Ben, or would you like to?
Yeah, um,
All right.
I have I don't know if I had 3, but I definitely want his Hero with Jet Li.
Mm,
If there is something with big, bold colors and photography, like, Zhang Yimou always does incredible films, and his use of color is much more not not classic, but he really uses his environment to his advantage. So if there's something that someone that's similarly, he's just using Thailand's neon lights to his advantage and the culture, the bold colors, the clashes of the colors, which are much more artificial due to just the lighting. But I think Hero by Zhang Yimou has this incredible saturation of colors and emotions that fit in between, and then the action is very wuxia style, like a lot of unbelievable things or whatever. But there is a central connecting plot, and it's told in flashbacks.
mm,
So it has a very fascinating kind of way of kind of introducing you to each character, and you get to you have a little bit more of a participation in it, because it just you get to choose what you want to believe, or what you believe is right, or what you think is right, or you're allowed to choose. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to feel about these things. So I think that'll be one of the things I can recommend for that.
sure.
After that, I would probably
Well, let's do Dino's first. Let's each give one, and that way we don't burn out all of yours up front here.
good.
Dino, what would be your first one of these
Mhm.
three?
So the first one I have is this film called You Were Never Really Here by Lynn Ramsey, starring Joaquin
Mm,
Phoenix. Have any of you guys seen this one?
of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I kind of drew parallel there because it's also like a great neo-noir film and also has a little girl and a mother and scenes with those that I sort of kind of like can draw parallel to this film, especially with the mother stuff, but without giving too much away for the plot. And when I first watched, because I only seen it once, and I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of this one on like the first watch, but I think it has potential if I watch it again with different expectations than I had back then. They would appreciate it more just because of the potential it has. And it's a very like dark and depressing film, or it starts off that way. So that's kind of my first pick.
Yeah, and it kind of stretches its foot into like the surrealism a little bit in that movie, from what I
Def-
remember too. It kind of is pretty fitting with this.
yeah.
My first one is a movie by Paul Schrader called Hardcore, that he made in '79. This is an awesome movie with George C. Scott, where his daughter, he's from like Minneapolis or like somewhere in like the Midwest. His daughter goes to Hollywood for some church trip, and turns out that she has ditched the trip and has joined the world of pornography. So he goes out to Hollywood and goes on this like journey to try to find his daughter, and it's very neon soaked. I would be shocked if Refn said that he had not seen it or was not a huge fan of this movie. It is kind of that revenge-driven sort of plot. In the movie, fuck, what was it called with Nick Cage? 8 millimeter is pretty much like a more modern remake of Hardcore. Um, which 8 millimeter was pretty good too, from what I remember. Very slimy, but I don't really remember that
I
movie as
haven't
well.
done 8 millimeter in so long. Holy
I
crap! You
I
mentioned eight
know.
millimeters, like, oh man, holy crap!
Yeah, 8 millimeter. I mean, 8 millimeter could probably be another good pick for this, but yeah, Hardcore's a great movie. I don't know how well seen it is. I think some people are like, have either of you guys seen Hardcore?
Nope.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in
Yeah,
a long time though, but yeah, it's great.
it's a great movie.
I
It's
haven't seen.
Dino, I know you love Schrader as well, so I think you would like. It's more on the Taxi Driver, Rolling Thunder
Mm.
size of movie as opposed to the First Reformed or the Card Counter kind of stuff you might prefer. But Hardcore is fucking
Trader's,
awesome.
yeah, he's my guy, and I want to like watch more of his filmography. So I'm currently
Yeah,
going through them actually. So that's one that I probably watch pretty soon, but didn't know
yeah.
about.
Hardcore is fucking great. It's a great movie. Um, yeah, and a great supporting role in that from Peter Boyle as well. That's very memorable. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Oh man,
my
that was really
first
good.
Nice.
one would be Hardcore. Ben, second pick. What you got?
Oh, this has been because I'm trying to think like I've been arguing between two films. It's both Japanese samurai films, Harakiri by Masato Kobayashi or Yojimbo by Kurosawa. Um, I think it's got to be Yojimbo, man. Just because of
Hmm.
just because he just obviously it influenced a fistful of dollars and everything later on, but I think that's something that you can find yourself relating story wise. He's just messing with two different groups and how he's structuring himself to work here and there. Like he's fucking with both people mentally,
Yeah.
and and you can see how he's playing these parts and also visually, even though it's black and white, visually it's the shapes that Kurosawa makes within what he uses, the bell tower in the middle and the two sides, and how he uses the room and how he uses these subtle movements of him being angry, and he just like he just does this shit like he just moves his shoulder as he's walking across the town. Those subtleties that you find in movements that don't really need to bring attention to themselves, but they do if you're looking close enough. That allows you to tell your own you're making assumptions for yourself. And this is where I think you're as an audience member, you're participating so much that these surprises are much more surprising to people than others because some people are paying attention to different things. So I think that
Hmm.
allows you to read more into these flatter, not flat palettes, but these palettes of these characters that are going around. Like you're like, oh, you can relate to one thing or another, and I think there's a subtlety that comes with it that is very minute or not a lot of people look at it like that, but like I think that those are moments that like when you rewatch these masters, they're really caring about these really small subtle moments that I think that if you enjoyed the Neon Demon, I think that when you go back to like the older masters and you look at how they use these movements and their kind of their interaction with these characters in that scene, you'll have an appreciation for it. Even with the lack of color, the depth of the shades of gray and the whites in it. It's always very very interesting because it's almost like the lack of color allows you to refocus on the structure and the texture of the feel, so that becomes
Hmm.
much more interesting. I think when you're enjoying those type of films.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how he was able to create contrast without color. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. That was a great pick. Dino, number two.
Yes. My next one is pretty much just an excuse for me to shout out this film. It's another fighting film, but more like boxing, and it's called In Full Bloom, which is an
Hmm.
incredible film. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen this one. It's called In
No,
Full
I've never
Bloom.
heard of it.
Yeah, so it was actually like when I started my page, it was one of the first screeners I got because I texted to one of the directors, Reza Ghassemi, and
Hmm.
he sent me a screener to watch it because I was very curious to check it out. And it's pretty much this film set, I think, shortly after World War II. And there are two fighters, one American and one Japanese, and they set up this big fight between like the two nations with those two characters. And so the Yakuza and his like corrupt managers pretty much set up this thing where the two of them have to fight. And you see both perspectives of both countries and both fighters and how they train and how they approach that, and they both have different personal stuff that they're going through as they're training, and it's a like very cool metaphor for it. And especially like the Japanese boxer, he sets to find like an old really like great boxer who has to teach him a lot of stuff. And there are also a lot of very beautiful visual stuff, just like Refn. There's one shot that is one of my favorite shots of all time where the Japanese fighter, he has like the bands across his hand, and it's his POV, like his perspective, and he's just looking at the sky with his hand out, also with the theme of like hands. And there are like all these beautiful cherry blossoms right behind it, and it's a beautiful shot. I'll send it to you guys. Maybe I'll put it here, but it's a great film, and I highly recommend checking it out. Not a lot of people have seen it. It's not very well known, but it's a great film. It's very beautiful and a very great story. So yeah, that's another like fighting film that I wanted to include in here.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna look that one up. That's a great pick.
It's on
Yeah, dude,
Amazon
I'm definitely looking that up. That's dope.
Yeah, it's
Hell
on
yeah.
Amazon Prime. I'm pretty sure.
Cool. Okay. In
Came out
Full Bloom, you said?
Info Bloom 2019.
Cool. Cool. I all right, my second pick. I'm kind of in between also with a few. If we did the typical four, I think I'd be okay, but try to squeeze in three. This one's a
Same.
little different, but there is a similar feel. I can't help but think about it when I see it, and that's the movie Saint Jack by Peter Bogdanovich. It's a
That's interesting take.
it's a movie with Ben Gazzara where he is like he's like this American he's like a hustler, I guess, but he lives in Singapore. Yeah, he lives in Singapore and he's running he's like a pimp essentially in Singapore. And it's the same sort of dynamic of like these white guys who have kind of taken over this like Asian culture and is sort of trying to uh fit their own agenda within the culture of the place that they're at. And there comes a point in the movie where, and this is like part of the setup from what I remember, where Ben Gazzara is like approached by like the FBI or the CIA or something like that, and they want him to run like a brothel for like all the like US soldiers that are on leave or on break or whatever the fuck they call it in Singapore. And there is like a real sliminess to that movie, and it's the same kind of sliminess that Refn, and it might be why he picked Thailand because you look at Only God Forgives, and there's a lot of scenes and shots. Like when he goes to that one, I think it's like in a garage or something where the dude is with his kid, and like it's just like it's like one of those rooms you can just like smell it. Like you can smell it through the screen. You're like, this is a disgusting, just fucking shithole that they're in. And a lot of Saint Jack feels that way as well, even though there's a lot more decadence in Saint Jack because he's making money and it seems like it's a much more profitable venture for Jack than it is for this Julian character, his brothers. But still, there is a certain sliminess and sort of that feel of these foreigners in a foreign land who are trying to run something that they think they can do, even though the difference in culture and the difference in just where you're at might make that a lot more difficult to achieve. But yeah, I it was just sort of that same idea, foreign person in a foreign land, um, doing some slimy, skeezy shit. But yeah, that's Saint Jack from '79 by Bogdanovich.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Hell yeah, Ben,
That's a
number
good choice.
three.
All right, so I had a very similar thought process because I was gonna go originally Ong Bak just because it's Thailand, but I actually think that it's not worth. Bad Lieutenant by Abel Ferrara
Oh
because I thought of
fuck yes,
the
let's go.
I thought of the cop, I thought of the cop, I thought of the lieutenant, and it's just the Bad Lieutenant, man. Abel Ferrara, that's the flip side of yours is he's trying to get all these fucking Puerto Ricans and like illegals out of
Yeah.
New York and just doing wild fucking shit. Like doesn't give a flying fuck about anything. It's like, yeah, that's for me. That Lieutenant original,
That's an
yeah.
amazing pick. Dino? Have you seen Bad Lieutenant? I like the original Bad Lieutenant movie.
I have, but it's been a long time. But I actually wanted to ask you guys if you've seen the remake and how that is, because I was always curious to check that
Out of
out. But
New
is it
Orleans?
Yeah, it's it's not like a proper remake. According to Herzog, he claims to not even know who Abel Ferrara is. According to Herzog, he had no idea that there was a Bad Lieutenant movie. Who knows
Mhm.
what this fucking guy's talking about? I don't know how you're not aware there's a movie with the same title, but
Mhm.
um he claims to have not seen it. He claims there's no, and there really is no connection. Like there's no, it's not the same person. Like it's a completely different thing.
Okay.
But I do kind of like it from if memory serves. Like, and it was a good cast. Like Nick Cage,
Yeah.
Val Kilmer like pops up in it. And
All
I lived
right.
in New Orleans for years, so I loved like seeing that. But yeah, to me, nothing beats like Abel Ferrara and Harvey Keitel with that story is like a perfect like trinity of disgusting shit, and it's a perfect
Oh,
combo. Whereas Bad Lieutenant, the Port of Call New Orleans, anyone could have directed it. I'm glad Herzog did, and I'm glad Cage was in it. Anyone could have played that. The original, there's no one else that could have directed it but Abel Ferrara. No one else could have acted in that but Harvey Keitel.
after the
So,
King of New York too, just
oh
fucking
my
coming out
god,
the fucking
that
lieutenant.
run in the '90s of Ferrara, like that first half of the '90s, was just
Woo!
unbelievable, dude. What an underrated
Yeah, I
fucking
fucking knew you
director,
were gonna like this pick.
dude. It's
I
so
knew you would
underrated.
like that.
That's my guy. Hell fucking yeah.
Uh,
um,
yeah.
that's a great fucking
So
pick though.
hero, Yojimbo, Bad Lieutenant. Yeah,
Fuck yeah, that's a
those are the
ballin'
picks.
ass top three. There we go. Dino,
That's a
what's your number three
yeah.
for this movie?
Amazing. So, funny enough, I also almost pick a film similar to what like Tristan and you said because I almost picked Infinity Pool just because of like
Ooh,
foreigners in another country running amok,
interesting pick, yeah.
killing people and things like that. So I almost picked that, but I didn't. There's this other film that I thought if Julian were to like live and be old and start a family, a character he'd be like, oh, that's literally me, and that's the film Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, which again
Oh yeah.
Oh
didn't
wow.
like it as much, but it also is about like this suppressed anger that I think Julian definitely has because of like his mother and the way he was treated, and Bob Odenkirk because he feels like he's a nobody and isn't like seen as much, so he finds a way to let that anger out by beating people up who deserve it. And I think Julian would definitely like look at the character and be like, oh, and like 40 years from now, that could be literally me. So I picked
Hell
Nobody.
yeah.
Ha-
Hell
Tristan,
yeah,
have you
that's a great pick.
Nice.
have you seen? You haven't seen, but I think Ben, you like.
I've seen Nobody.
No, yeah,
I've seen it.
Oh,
yep.
you've both seen it. Okay,
Mhm. I
and they're
love that
making
movie. That movie
I
was
just like
fucking sick.
a
that
second one, a
tattoo
sequel.
parlor scene.
I think next
I saw
year.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I saw that
Uh,
they were like they had been developing it for some time, like after the first one came out, but I wasn't quite sure
I
like the
think.
progress on it.
Yeah, I think it's announced
oh,
for like
also because Bob
next year, but
Odenkirk
I'm
had
like,
a fucking heart attack.
That's right. Yeah, everything did shut down when Bob Odenkirk like
Yeah,
damn near died for
yeah.
6 months. Everything just shut down. Um,
Mhm.
cool. That's a great pick. Well, like you guys still were able to get the best of both worlds. You sort of name dropped another movie before giving your third, so that makes
mhm,
me feel good about being able to still name all four. At first,
oh,
I
yeah.
Yeah.
was thinking about a movie that you and I had talked about on the pod before, Dino. So I kind of stayed away, and that's Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, one of my all-time favorite
Yeah,
movies
yeah.
ever, ever.
Ben is excited.
Um, actually, you know
That's
what?
a
Fuck it. I'm
damn
gonna
good
pick
pick.
Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia because it works better. The other movie I considered was a more recent movie called Brawl in Cell Block 99, with Vince Vaughn by
Oh,
Craig Zoller.
that's a
Um,
great fucking film.
fuck, which one do I go with? I'm gonna go Alfredo Garcia.
Alfredo,
Um,
I'm sorry, Alfredo Garcia. Absolutely, like,
yeah,
look,
I'm gonna go
yeah,
Alfredo Garcia. Brawl in Cell Block 99, very dope. I like Craig S. Zoller. I love what he's doing. I like his movies. I hope he continues to make more. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, though,
that Pumpkin Paw, yo,
is one of the
Mhm.
great. This is, and Dino knows. I have a poster in the other room out there. Like
Yep.
this is one of my top 10. I love this movie more than anything. For years and years, I think when Dino and I met, my Instagram profile picture was Warren Oates in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. Um, but it's a movie that is about revenge, kind of. And I couldn't stop thinking about Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, especially when what's her name? Chris Scott Thomas was like, he would have brought him his head on a platter. Immediately, I was like, "Oh, bring me the head of Alfredo Garcia." I was like, "That's so funny." But there is a sort of like anti-revenge. Like the revenge is being carried out, but it's not being carried out by the person we're following. Like it's being carried out by like the drug lord or like whatever. But Warren Oates is not on a trip of revenge at all. He's really just trying to make a come up. Like he's just like, well, shit, I'll make a ton of money if I get this guy's head who's already dead. I might as well. So there is sort of again a very, albeit very small, but there is a very like tiny little moral compass somewhere where he didn't feel comfortable with it until he found out the dude was already dead. And I feel like that Julian character, again, it's small, but there is some kind of like morality to him where he's like, well, I would have kicked his ass, killed him, and brought you his head, mom, but our brother also did some really shitty things, so I don't know if like if that's fair. And I feel like there's a certain kind of weighing of pros and cons with that Benny character in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. But yeah, that's one of my all time favorites, and I could not stop thinking about it, especially after that moment when Gosling and his mom are talking in Only God Forgives. But
Also
yeah,
the severed hands and the severed head. So I think that's also
exactly.
yep.
Exactly. Another movie where I'd be surprised if Refn was not like a huge fan of that movie. But yeah, no,
I mean, you recommended it to me. That was the first time I watched it. I think it was like last year, beginning of last year when we did that episode,
yeah,
and it's such a
yeah,
great film. I right now I just want to rewatch it just because you mentioned it.
yeah. It's fucking amazing. Yeah, if we want to run down through our list for anyone who's listening and trying to keep track, my three were Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, Saint Jack, and Hardcore by Paul Schrader.
And mine were you were never really here, In Full Bloom, and Nobody.
And mine was Hero by Zhang Yimou, Yojimbo by Akira Kurosawa, and Bad Lieutenant by Abel Ferrara.
Oh yeah. That might be. I would love to see the amount of lists that there are out there that include both Abel Ferrara and Kurosawa on the same list. That's pretty sick. That's pretty awesome. Well, hey Ben, thank you so much for hopping on the pod with us for discussing Only God Forgives, discussing other movies that may or may not be better than Only God Forgives, and ultimately just thanks for hanging out with us for the last hour.
Dude, this has been awesome. It's been a lot of fucking fun. Yeah, like me, Dino knows how much I ramble when it comes to talking about films. So
I'm
this
the
is
same
really good to
way.
have a structure. It's really great to have a structure because I'll just go off on the fucking rails and talk forever about
We
films.
leave room for that
So
because that's also like important when people ramble. But it's also great because we managed to get. We didn't mention it like 3 different time zones. You're in Vietnam. Tristan is in
yeah,
Florida. Somewhere in the middle, I guess, if you go that direction. So
yeah,
I'm glad
Yeah.
we got that.
Let's go ahead and give a rundown. This is what the listeners waited the whole hour to hear. What time is it for you right now, Ben? What time of day is it?
it is 9:36 p.m. in Hanoi, Vietnam.
Okay. Dino, what time is it for you? Like noon or no?
It's
2?
3:60
3:36? Okay.
36.
p.m. Yep.
Okay, yeah. 10:36 in the morning for here for me. So we got we got all the whole
All of it.
spectrum down here. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we got the full each continent, at least a piece of it. Yeah.
Hell yeah, we're doing the Refn trek where we're gonna try to get every continent down and yeah. But dude, thank you for coming on the pod. I had a blast. If there are any other Gosling movies that you hate or love, we'd love to have you back on as we go through this
Oh,
journey of Gosling movies for
Or Tom
sure.
Cruise.
half
We're doing Tom
Or
Cruise
Tom
half
after that.
Cruise.
Nelson.
We're gonna do Tom Cruise next.
Yep.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so Ryan Gosling, half Nelson, Lars and the Real Girl,
Hell yeah.
fantastic film. Tom Cruise, I mean, Jesus, just before he became the action star, his stuff of Born on the 4th of July, Magnolia,
Yeah.
even Taps, he's amazing in.
I've not seen Taps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Taps, yeah, you like Taps is like where he really starts like coming out, like where he really, I think, got like one of his leading supporting roles between
Yeah.
from Timothy Hutton, I believe. Um, but you see his character work during the ones that you hate with fucking Tom Cruise is Far and Away with by what's this fucking Ron Howard. And it's just like the worst Irish accent in the world with him and Nicole Kidman. It's like,
Is that okay?
they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
my the fuck, dude. It's just like Jesus. It's like, well, fucking head. Like, okay, whatever, dude. It's shot on 70 millimeters, fine, whatever. But yeah, like there's the character work that Tom Cruise does, before he becomes just like a super massive star, but then like yeah, like there's occasional things where he does really great, interesting. He was a really fantastic character actor, so I think like that'll be a really fun. That's gonna be a fun fucking trip for y'all to go down that list. Jesus.
I've been on a huge Tom Cruise kick where I was telling Dino this. I was 100. I only watched all the post 2001 movies where Tom Cruise doesn't play characters anymore. He just plays Tom Cruise. You know, I think the only exception is like
Yeah.
Collateral. After that, like Collateral is like an actual
Oh
character he
my
plays.
collateral. Fuck
Great fucking
me.
movie.
So fucking good. Yeah,
It's so
but
good. And
you would
but besides
love
that,
fucking him
he
in
just plays himself. Yeah, throughout the whole 2000s or after 2001. I feel like Vanilla Sky is the last like interesting character like that he took apart from Collateral. Like after that, it was just
Yeah, I
Tom
was
Cruise.
about
He's
to
just
say.
playing Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but at a certain point, most actors play themselves after a
For
while,
sure.
so it becomes the difference between films now and back then was, you went for the star, you didn't
Oh
go for the
yeah.
character. So now people are going like, "Oh, I'm going for the superhero, not the person playing it." So that's why they can replace them and
Yeah. Yeah.
use
Great
and
point.
reuse, recycle them over and over again. Like you know Tom Holland because he was Spider-Man. You knew Tobey Maguire, and you were fascinated when he became Spider-Man.
Mhm.
But now it's like Tom Cruise. He's the one that's bringing. It's like same thing with like directors and actors. It's like, do you go see? Is this a Scorsese film or is it a Leonardo DiCaprio film or
Sure.
is it a Paul Thomas Anderson film or is it a Philip Seymour Hoffman? You know what I mean? Like Joaquin Phoenix film, like
Yeah.
all these things. But yeah, man. Oh my God! Like all you even had A Few Good Men. Jesus! Oh,
Dude,
you
this
guys
dude
are gonna have so much.
snaps. Yes, dude. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Oh,
Tom Cruise
you are
is
gonna have
becoming one of my guys. Yeah.
You are gonna have the fucking best time. Oh my God. You just went after 2001? Jesus. Eyes wide shut, man. Like,
My favorite. Yeah. My favorite. Because now that I finished all the post 2001 Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise, now I'm going back and rewatching or watching the stuff that I hadn't seen of like prior. Last night I watched Interview with the Vampire for the first time. Never seen it. I cannot believe
wow.
he was cast in that movie. I cannot believe
Yeah.
that movie exists with Tom Cruise. It's insane. It's insane that he was in that movie. I love it.
The Outsiders, Top Gun, fucking Rain Man. Oh my God.
The dude went crazy. He went
You are
bananas for
gonna
no
have
reason.
he was yeah, like there was a serious like he was a serious fucking like good actor during those eras, like and he worked with some
Hell yeah,
fucking
dude.
titans. Like he like
Yeah, dude.
gee, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of fucking fun with that shit. Yo, call me back on one of those shits, man.
We
Those sound
got
be
you.
fun.
We got you. You let
Yeah.
us know which of those stand out the most in the whole career, and we'll get you on for
Oh,
sure. That'll be a
I
fun one.
already know what we're doing. I already know what we're doing. We're doing Paul Thomas Anderson. We're doing Magnolia.
Magnolia?
Absolutely.
Fuck yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Respect the
Absolutely.
cock. We got it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah,
But
dude. Well, thanks for
before you
coming
end
on
this,
again. Yeah, yeah,
Ben,
yeah.
do you have anything you want to shout out? Anything?
Right.
Any projects you could work
Uh
on? Something that you're putting out?
I
Whatever.
mean I'm working. Yeah, I'm working on a ton of like so I'm based in Vietnam at the moment, but I'm just working on a documentary, which is a little bit more avant-garde style. It's called Lingua Franca is a working title at the moment. I think I read Dino some of the prose pieces on that, and
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
I'm re-editing one of the shorts I had. I'm trying to work out the timeline, but to shoot Chiron's Obol, which is which is a surrealist and absurdist short film, but no dialogue.
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna see how to work out that type of stuff. So yeah, I'm working on a couple projects in the States as well. Producing a couple other pieces, but slowly but surely things will start happening. And then if anything happens, I'd love for you guys to take a look. I'd love to get your opinion, and once the things are ready for a proper viewing, and would appreciate that.
Hell yeah, brother.
Nice.
I'm excited to check that shit out. Let's go. Well, I think
Yeah, man.
it was a pleasure having you on, Dino. As always, love talking to you. I love talking movies. And yeah, next week we'll be back. We're going back down the list. I believe we have Gangster Squad next week
Oh,
before we do Drive,
it's
which
gonna
I've
be.
not seen. I've not
Oh,
seen Gangster Squad actually, but I'm very curious. I just worked
Oh,
with an actor recently who's in that movie, so I'm curious to see him in it.
interesting.
So yeah, very
All right.
very
Oh
interested
my
to see
God.
Gangster
I'm just
Squad.
thinking of Gangster Squad right now. That's what Sean Penn, Emma Stone, and fucking Ryan Gosling about the
Yeah,
Mickey, the gangster 1920s in Los Angeles, right?
yeah, yeah. I initially thought of like the Public Enemy movie with Johnny Depp. Like that's
Right.
another one that I always confuse those two. Which that movie I've
Yeah.
seen. That movie fucking stinks. But I'm very excited for Gangster Squad.
I'm not. I'm not excited to
No.
rewatch it. Nope,
All right.
absolutely not. But
All right. Put
then
that hater
again,
cap
That
on, Dino.
I don't like
yo,
hated
I
movies.
take the hater cap I put on for Only God Forgives, and you
Pass
wear
the
that with
torch.
pride, Dino.
Pass the
I'm
torch
I'm
gonna
to him,
take it
passing
man.
from you.
the hat I've hated him is passed on. Hate, like on
Yeah.
words. I think that's absolutely, yeah. Fuck me, that's amazing.
Hell yeah. Is this the same hater cap that I was wearing during the Gray Man episode of this podcast?
Probably, probably.
Yo,
Now
just the way
everyone
you
had it on.
talked about the Russo brothers, I was like, yo, my man is drinking that haterade and he is in
Yeah.
system.
I
Holy
am
shit,
straight
and it is
mainline in
working.
that pains. I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it.
I'm excited to revisit like Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling's like their relationship because this is the second
Yeah.
time they've been in the film together.
Yeah.
And I like now post La La Land because I saw it before La La Land obviously
Right.
came out.
This Crazy Stupid
Mhm.
Love was an amazing fucking film.
Yep.
Yeah, incredible. One of the best rom-coms maybe ever.
Hell yeah.
Oh, it's such a good film. I fucking love that film. But yeah. Oh, okay, right, yeah, because that Gangster Squad was just before La La Land, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So we're going in the Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling trilogy into the second
Yep.
film. So
I'm excited. So
mm,
tune in, folks. Next week, we're going to talk Gangster Squad. Going to talk hater caps and all sorts of fun stuff. So come back on. Thanks for listening. And yeah, Ben, we'll have you back on here soon.
Appreciate it, man.
Hell yeah.
Take care,
bye bye.
everybody.